Hello guys, this is your Dark Fox Sage and we are back with our new fanfic, which is what if exiled Naruto was raised by samurais and returned back to Konoha Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic, then please press the like button and please subscribe to the channel. It motivates me to upload more fanfic like these for you all. Now let's start the fanfic. The night was cold, the wind carrying whispers of sorrow through the trees surrounding the village hidden in the leaves. Beneath the dim glow of the moon, an infant cried, wrapped in a thin cloth, his golden hair reflecting the pale light. The council's decree had been swift. Minato and Kushina were dead, and the child they had left behind was too dangerous to be raised among them. Hiruzen Sarutobi, burdened with the weight of leadership once more, stood at the gates of Konoha, his old hands trembling as he held the baby in his arms. "I am sorry, Minato, Kushina," he murmured, staring at the small child who bore the legacy of the Hokage. "This is the only way to keep him safe." Beside him stood a lone samurai, his armor gleaming under the moonlight. A man of the land of iron, known as Hiroshi Kenzuki, who had come to Konoha as a silent observer during the chaos of the Nine Tails attack. Unlike the shinobi, his people did not rely on chakra but on steel, on discipline, on the unbreakable code of Bushido. He looked down at the child with an unreadable expression, his weathered face betraying no emotion. "You are certain about this, Lord Hokage?" Hiroshi's voice was measured, calm, lacking the hesitation that plagued Sarutobi's heart. The old Hokage nodded, unwilling to meet his gaze. "I cannot protect him here. There are too many who would seek his death before he even has a chance to live. I ask you, raise him as your own. Let him know a life free from the burden of being the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails. Teach him your ways, your honor." Hiroshi studied the child for a long moment, then extended his hands. "If that is your wish, I shall take him." Sarutobi hesitated before handing the infant over. The baby, oblivious to the weight of his fate, gripped the edge of Hiroshi's armor with tiny fingers, his cries softening into whimpers. "I will not return him to you," Hiroshi warned. "Once he leaves these gates, he belongs to the land of iron. To the way of the sword." Sarutobi swallowed the lump in his throat. "That is why I am entrusting him to you." Without another word, the samurai turned and disappeared into the darkness of the forest, his steps silent as he carried the child away from the village that should have been his home. The night swallowed them whole, and the infant known as Naruto Uzumaki was erased from Konoha's history. Years passed like the changing of the seasons. Deep within the land of iron, where the mountains stood tall and the snow never fully melted, a boy grew. He did not bear the Konoha forehead protector, nor did he practice the jutsu of the shinobi. His world was one of steel, of relentless discipline, of swords sharpened by the wind and hands calloused from endless training. Naruto Kenzuki, as he had come to be known, knew nothing of the land he had been born in. To him, the land of iron was home. The dojo was his world. The blade was his future. From the moment he could walk, Hiroshi had placed a wooden practice sword in his hands, teaching him the fundamentals of the samurai's way. It was not a life of warmth, nor was it a life of cruelty. It was a life of order. Each morning, before the sun had fully risen, he trained. He learned the weight of the blade, the rhythm of battle, the precision of a strike that could decide life or death. There was no chakra to aid him, no shortcuts, no illusions. Only skill, only discipline. He sparred with other students, older boys who towered over him, and though he often lost, he never yielded. Hiroshi would watch from the sidelines, his gaze like steel, never praising, never reprimanding, only observing. Pain was a constant companion. Bruises and cuts became reminders of lessons learned. But Naruto never faltered. He never questioned why his life was different, why he was made to endure when others lived in comfort. "Why do we fight?" Hiroshi asked him one evening as they sat outside the dojo, the sky painted in hues of red and orange. Naruto, no older than 6, tightened his grip around the wooden practice sword. He thought of the countless times he had been knocked down, of the sting of cold air against sweat-soaked skin. He met Hiroshi's gaze with unwavering eyes. To protect. Hiroshi nodded, satisfied. Good. Remember that. The years continued to pass, and Naruto's skill with the sword grew. He moved like the wind, his strikes swift and decisive. He had learned to read an opponent's movements, to react without thought, to strike without hesitation. Yet, despite his strength, there was something within him that he could not name, a fire that burned deep inside, a presence that stirred in the depths of his being. It was on his 12th winter that he first heard the voice. It came in whispers, curling through his thoughts like smoke, an unfamiliar yet oddly familiar presence. At first, he dismissed it as exhaustion, but as the days passed, the voice grew stronger. You are not one of them. Naruto froze, his breath hitching. He was alone in the dojo, practicing his forms under the dim lantern light. His fingers tightened around the hilt of his wooden sword. You do not belong here. The voice was deep, ancient, filled with a restrained fury that sent a shiver down his spine. He spun around, half expecting to see someone standing behind him, but there was only emptiness. Who are you? He asked aloud, his voice steady despite the unease coiling in his gut. A low chuckle echoed in his mind. I am the one they fear. The one they cast away. And I am inside you. Naruto's heart pounded. He did not understand the meaning behind those words, but he knew one thing for certain. Something was awakening within him. And it was only the beginning. The whispers did not stop. At first, they were subtle, barely a breath against the edges of his thoughts, but as days turned to weeks, they grew stronger. They came in his moments of exhaustion, in the silence after battle drills, in the darkness before sleep claimed him. A constant presence, watching, waiting. Naruto did not speak of it. He had learned long ago that showing weakness invited judgment, and he had no desire to appear fragile in the eyes of his master or his peers. He buried the unease beneath his training, sharpening his focus, wielding his sword with more precision, more control. But the voice remained. It was during a sparring match that the first crack appeared. The training hall was cold, the scent of sweat and polished wood filling the air. Naruto stood in the center, his wooden sword raised, facing one of the senior students, a boy 3 years older, taller, stronger. The duel had been going for minutes, both refusing to yield, their breaths coming in ragged bursts. The onlookers stood in tense silence, waiting for the moment when one of them would falter. Naruto's arms burned, his muscles screaming from the exertion, but he refused to show it. His opponent lunged, his strike swift, aimed to disarm. Naruto twisted his wrist at the last second, deflecting the blow with a sharp clang. The impact rattled his bones, but he pushed forward, stepping inside the boy's guard. A surge of something wild and unfamiliar, rushed through him. His vision sharpened. The world slowed. He saw the boy's next move before it even began. Strike now. End it. The voice roared through his mind, and before he could stop himself, he moved. His wooden sword lashed out with terrifying speed, bypassing the boy's defense, striking his ribs with such force that the impact echoed through the hall. The boy gasped, stumbling back, his weapon slipping from his grasp as he collapsed onto the wooden floor. A stunned silence filled the dojo. The watching students exchanged glances. Even the instructors, men who had seen thousands of battles, regarded Naruto with unreadable expressions. He had won, but not as he should have. He had moved too fast. Struck too hard. The voice chuckled. Naruto lowered his weapon, his breath unsteady. He could still feel it. The rush of power, the strange clarity, the way his body had responded without hesitation. It had not been instinct alone. It had been something else. Someone else. That night, he sat alone in his quarters, staring at his reflection in the polished blade of his katana. His face was the same, yet, it wasn't. His blue eyes seemed darker, deeper. What are you? He asked aloud. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. Then, a slow, deep rumble filled his mind. I am the truth they never told you. I am the power they feared. A sudden pain lanced through his skull, sharp and unbearable. Naruto clenched his teeth, gripping his head as his vision blurred. Images flashed before his eyes, memories that were not his own. A monstrous beast cloaked in flames. A village in chaos. A man and woman standing before the creature, their faces blurred, their voices lost in the storm. A seal. A name. Uzumaki. The pain faded as quickly as it had come, leaving Naruto gasping for breath. His fingers trembled against the steel of his blade. The name echoed in his mind, foreign yet familiar. He had never questioned where he had come from. Hiroshi had never spoken of his origins, and Naruto had never asked. He had been content to believe he was simply another orphan taken in by the samurai. But now, they lied to you. Naruto's grip tightened around the hilt of his sword. He needed answers. And he would find them. The first rays of dawn crept over the snow-covered peaks of the Land of Iron, casting long shadows across the dojo courtyard. Naruto stood at the edge of the training ground, his breath visible in the frigid morning air. His mind was a storm, the echoes of the voice still lingering in the depths of his consciousness. He had never questioned his place in this world before, but now the doubt gnawed at him like a blade pressed against his throat. Hiroshi stood across from him, watching as he prepared for their morning kata. The old samurai's expression was unreadable, as it always was, his weathered hands resting on the hilt of his sheathed katana. Without a word, he drew his blade, signaling for Naruto to begin. Naruto moved on instinct, his body flowing through the familiar patterns of attack and defense, steel clashing against steel in a deadly rhythm. He had trained for this moment his entire life, yet for the first time, his heart was not fully in it. His thoughts kept drifting back to the visions, the monstrous beast, the name that felt like a ghost whispering in his ear. Uzumaki. The moment of hesitation cost him. Hiroshi's blade struck his with a force that rattled his bones, sending him stumbling back. The old samurai did not press the attack but fixed him with a piercing gaze. Your mind is elsewhere. Naruto clenched his jaw, tightening his grip on his sword. I'm fine. A rare flicker of amusement crossed Hiroshi's face. Lying does not suit you. He sheathed his blade in a single fluid motion. You have questions. Naruto hesitated, then lowered his weapon. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken truths. Finally, he exhaled. Who am I? Hiroshi did not answer immediately. He turned, staring toward the distant mountains, where the wind howled like an unseen specter. I was wondering when you would ask. Naruto's pulse quickened. Then you know. Hiroshi nodded. I have always known. The weight of those words settled over him like a crushing tide. He had expected denial, hesitation, anything but confirmation. He swallowed hard. Tell me. For the first time in his life, Hiroshi looked older. More tired. You were not born here, Naruto. You were born in the village hidden in the leaves. Konoha. The name sent a jolt through his spine. Konoha. He had heard it before, in passing conversations among travelers, but it had never meant anything to him. Until now. Why did you take me? His voice was quieter now, edged with something unrecognizable. Hiroshi met his gaze, and in his eyes, Naruto saw something that made his stomach tighten. Regret. They exiled you. The words cut deeper than any blade. Naruto felt his fingers tremble around his sword hilt. Why? Hiroshi sighed, his breath misting in the cold air. Because they feared you. A chill ran down Naruto's spine that had nothing to do with the winter air. Feared him. Hiroshi's voice remained calm, steady. Your parents were shinobi. Your father was the fourth Hokage. The world seemed to tilt beneath Naruto's feet. He took a step back, his breath caught in his throat. The fourth Hokage. The legendary leader of Konoha. The man who had stood against the nine-tailed fox. His father. His vision blurred for a moment, the memories of the voice, of the beast's fiery eyes, rushing back to him. And suddenly, he understood. The whispers. The visions. The power that stirred inside him. The nine-tailed fox was inside him. His stomach churned, his body going rigid. He had spent his life training in the way of the sword, believing in honor, discipline, strength earned through hardship. But now, the foundation of his entire existence was cracking beneath him. He was not just Naruto Kenzuki. He was Naruto Uzumaki, son of the Hokage. And Konoha had cast him aside. A storm of emotions raged within him: confusion, anger, betrayal. The samurai had taught him that honor was everything. That duty was the path to true strength. But the village that should have protected him had thrown him away like a discarded blade. His knuckles whitened as he gripped his sword. Why tell me now? Hiroshi watched him carefully. Because you are no longer a boy. You are a warrior. And a warrior must know the truth of his own existence. Naruto's heart pounded in his chest. He had spent his life believing the sword was his only path, that the way of the samurai was all he needed. But now, a different fire burned inside him. He had been abandoned, rejected, but he was still standing. Naruto took a deep breath, steadying himself. He would not break. He was stronger than that. Stronger than them. For the first time in his life, he had a choice. Remain in the land of iron, bound by the path he had always known. Or return to Konoha and face the past that had been stolen from him. His grip on his sword tightened. The answer was clear. It was time to return. The journey to Konoha was not an easy one. The land of iron was isolated, its towering mountains and relentless snowfall shielding it from the outside world. It was a land of warriors, untouched by the politics of shinobi, and for 12 years, it had been the only home Naruto had ever known. Now, he was leaving it behind. Hiroshi did not try to stop him. He only watched as Naruto packed his few belongings: a change of clothes, a sharpening stone for his katana, and a small pouch of ryo. He had no scrolls, no weapons beyond his blade, no remnants of the village that had abandoned him. As he stood at the gates of the dojo, Naruto turned to his master. Will you come with me? Hiroshi shook his head. This is a journey you must take alone. Naruto expected as much. He had always been alone in some way. The old samurai stepped forward, placing a firm hand on Naruto's shoulder. Remember what I have taught you. Honor is not given, it is earned. Strength is not power, it is discipline. Do not let the past define you. Naruto nodded, his grip tightening around the hilt of his sword. He bowed deeply, one last sign of respect for the man who had raised him, and then he turned, stepping into the unknown. The road to Konoha was long. He traveled through dense forests, crossed rivers half frozen with ice, and moved through villages where shinobi were a common sight. He had seen them before: men and women adorned with forehead protectors, moving with a confidence that was different from the warriors of the land of iron. They relied on chakra, on techniques that defied the natural order of battle. Naruto did not resent them. But he did not trust them either. As the days passed, he kept to himself, avoiding unnecessary conversations, always keeping his katana within reach. The voice inside him, the presence that had been waiting, was silent now, watching. It was nearly a week before the gates of Konoha finally came into view. He stood at the edge of the treeline, his sharp eyes taking in the massive wooden doors, the guards stationed at the entrance, the bustling energy of the village beyond. It was different from the land of iron, louder, brighter, filled with people who walked without the weight of discipline in their steps. This was the village that had cast him away. Naruto adjusted the sheath at his waist and took his first step forward. The guards noticed him immediately. He was an outsider, dressed in the black and gray robes of a samurai, his sword a clear indication that he was not a common traveler. One of them, a man with dark hair and a scar across his nose, stepped forward, holding up a hand. State your name and business in Konoha. Naruto met his gaze without hesitation. Naruto Uzumaki. The effect was immediate. The other guard stiffened. The man in front of him blinked, his stance shifting slightly. For a moment, there was silence, as if the weight of the name had stolen the air itself. Repeat that, the man said, his voice quieter now. Naruto's jaw tightened. Naruto Uzumaki. The guards exchanged glances before one of them nodded. Wait here. Naruto said nothing as the man disappeared beyond the gates. He could feel the weight of the remaining guard's gaze, the barely concealed curiosity in his eyes. He was sure that within minutes, the entire village would know. He had returned. Minutes passed. Then the gates creaked open. The first person to step through was an old man in a red and white hat, his eyes sharp yet filled with something unreadable. Naruto recognized him instantly. He had seen the man before, in his memories, in his visions. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The village leader studied him carefully, his aged features betraying no emotion. Then, finally, he sighed. I never thought I would see you again. Naruto's fingers curled into fists at his sides. Neither did I. Sarutobi stepped forward. You must have many questions. I have answers of my own first, Naruto said, his voice steady. You exiled me. You threw me away because you feared me. There was no hesitation in his words, no doubt. He wanted to hear the truth, not excuses. The Hokage's expression did not change, but there was something in his eyes, a flicker of regret. Yes. Naruto's breath was slow and controlled, but inside, something burned. Then why are you welcoming me back now? Sarutobi held his gaze, the weight of his years pressing down on his shoulders. Because you survived. The words lingered between them, heavy and unspoken. Naruto exhaled. He had not come here seeking acceptance. He had come because this village owed him something. He had come to understand why. And he would get his answers. One way or another. The Hokage turned, gesturing for Naruto to follow. The guard stepped aside, and for the first time in his life, Naruto Uzumaki walked into the village that had abandoned him. The streets of Konoha were alive with movement, merchants calling out their wares, children running past with laughter in their voices, shinobi moving between rooftops with ease. But as Naruto strode through the village, the air shifted. Conversations grew quieter, eyes turned toward him, whispers followed his steps like ghosts. Who is that? His hair? He looks like Uzumaki. But I thought he was. Naruto ignored them. He had spent his life training among warriors who judged only by the strength of one's blade, not by rumors and shadows. He had no time for the uncertainty in their eyes, for the murmured confusion. As they walked, Sarutobi remained silent. It wasn't until they reached the Hokage tower that the old man spoke again. Come. Naruto followed him inside, up the winding staircase, until they reached the Hokage's office. The door closed behind them, sealing them away from the world outside. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Sarutobi moved behind his desk, settling into his chair. The weight of his years was evident now, more than ever. He studied Naruto carefully, as if trying to see the boy he had once abandoned within the young warrior before him. You are different than I expected. Naruto met his gaze evenly. You don't know me. The Hokage exhaled, nodding slowly. No, I do not. He steepled his fingers. But I know what you are. And I know what was done to you. Naruto's fingers twitched at his sides. Then explain it. The old man sighed. 12 years ago, on the night of your birth, the nine-tailed fox attacked this village. Many died. Your parents. He hesitated for a fraction of a second. Your father, the fourth Hokage, gave his life to seal the beast away. Naruto remained silent, his jaw tightening. He knew this part already. He had seen it in flashes, in whispers that clawed at the edges of his mind. What you may not know, Sarutobi continued, is that he sealed it inside you. A slow, steady breath. I figured as much. The Hokage watched him carefully. Then you understand why the village reacted as it did. Naruto's lips pressed into a thin line. You feared me. The old man's gaze did not waver. Yes. There was no denial. No attempt to soften the truth. Naruto appreciated that much. What I don't understand, Naruto said, voice even, is why you didn't kill me. Sarutobi leaned back slightly. I would not kill an innocent child. Naruto let out a quiet, humorless laugh. But you would abandon one. The Hokage did not look away. It was not my decision alone. The council, the elders, there were those who believed exile was the best way to ensure the village's safety. Naruto's hands curled into fists at his sides. Then why bring me back? Sarutobi's expression was unreadable. Because you came back on your own. The words hung between them. Naruto exhaled, his grip loosening. He had suspected as much. If he had never returned, Konoha would have been content to let him disappear, a forgotten mistake swept beneath the snow of the Land of Iron. He met the Hokage's gaze, unflinching. I didn't come here to beg for a place in this village. Sarutobi nodded slowly. Then why did you come? Naruto tilted his head, his eyes sharp. Because I want to know what happens next. The old man studied him for a long moment. Then, almost imperceptibly, he smiled. Then let's find out. The Hokage's words hung in the air, but Naruto remained silent, his sharp gaze locked onto the old man's. He wasn't a fool. Sarutobi might regret the decision made 12 years ago, but that did not mean he trusted him. Trust was not given, it was earned. And Konoha had done nothing to earn his. Sarutobi leaned forward slightly, his wrinkled hands resting atop his desk. You have returned to the village, Naruto. But the question remains, what do you intend to do now? Naruto exhaled slowly, his fingers brushing against the hilt of his katana. The answer had already formed in his mind long before he reached the gates of Konoha. I want what was taken from me, he said evenly. The Hokage's expression did not change. And what do you believe that is? Naruto held his gaze. My birthright. A flicker of something unreadable passed through the old man's eyes. The title of Hokage. Naruto's lips curled into a shadow of a smirk. No. He stepped forward, his voice calm, measured. I have no interest in the politics of this village. I was raised in the Land of Iron, where warriors earn their strength, not through titles, but through skill. I will not bow to a system that abandoned me. His eyes darkened slightly. But that does not mean I will stand aside. Sarutobi remained quiet for a moment, as if measuring his words. Then what is it that you seek? Naruto's grip on his katana tightened. Respect. The word was spoken with quiet finality. Sarutobi studied him, his gaze lingering on the young warrior before him. Respect is not granted, it is taken. Naruto smirked. Then I will take it. A quiet chuckle left the old man's lips, though there was no amusement in his eyes. You are your father's son. Naruto's smirk faded. I am not my father. I never had the chance to be. Sarutobi exhaled, leaning back in his chair. Very well. He tapped his fingers against the desk, considering. You have returned, but the village does not know you. They will not trust you easily. Naruto shrugged. I don't expect them to. The Hokage nodded. Then I will not stand in your way. But if you intend to stay, you must decide where you belong. Naruto remained still. Belonging. The word felt foreign to him. He had never belonged. Not in Konoha, not truly in the Land of Iron. He had been raised by warriors, trained in a way of life that was not his by blood. But blood alone did not define him. Finally, he spoke. I will prove myself. Sarutobi studied him for a long moment. Then he reached into his desk, pulling out a forehead protector and placing it on the surface between them. The symbol of Konoha gleamed in the dim light. If you wish to walk among shinobi, you will need to stand among them, the Hokage said. Join the ranks. Show them who you are. Naruto's eyes flickered to the forehead protector, then back to the old man. He did not move to take it. I do not need to be a shinobi to be strong. Sarutobi's lips curled slightly. No, but this village will not respect an outsider. Naruto let the words settle. He had returned not to seek acceptance, but to take what had been denied to him. To stand above those who had once cast him aside. If this was the path to that goal, so be it. Without a word, he reached out, grasping the forehead protector in his calloused fingers. The metal was cool against his skin, the fabric rough. He lifted it, staring at the symbol that had once been his by birthright. Then, slowly, he tied it around his head. Sarutobi smiled, but there was something else in his gaze, something thoughtful. Welcome back, Naruto. Naruto adjusted the headband slightly. He did not smile. This was not a homecoming. This was a reclamation, and he would not stop until the entire village knew it. The air in the Hokage's office felt heavier now, thick with unspoken words and lingering tension. Naruto stood still, his fingers brushing against the forehead protector that now rested on his brow. It felt strange, foreign, yet familiar. A symbol of a village that had discarded him, now resting against his skin. Sarutobi studied him for a moment longer before reaching into his desk again. This time, he retrieved a folder, flipping it open. Since you have chosen to walk the path of a shinobi, you will be placed on a team. Naruto's eyes flickered toward the old man. A team. The Hokage nodded. All genin work in squads of 3 under the guidance of a Jonin sensei. It is how we ensure cooperation and teamwork. Naruto's jaw tightened slightly. He had trained alone for years, relying only on himself. The thought of working alongside others, especially those who had been raised in this village, left a bitter taste in his mouth. Who are they? He asked, his voice even. Sarutobi glanced at the folder. Your team was already formed before your arrival. You will be assigned to Team 7. He paused. Under Kakashi Hatake. Naruto blinked. The name was unfamiliar, but there was something in the Hokage's tone, something cautious. Sarutobi continued, Kakashi was one of the 4th Hokage's students. He is among the most skilled shinobi in Konoha. Naruto remained silent, a student of the man who had sealed the 9 tails inside him. How ironic. And the others? Sarutobi's expression remained neutral. Sasuke Uchiha and Sakura Haruno. At that, Naruto's fingers twitched slightly. Uchiha. He had heard the name before. Even in the Land of Iron, the reputation of the Uchiha clan was known, prodigies of the Sharingan, warriors of unmatched skill. But something felt off. He had not seen any Uchiha in the village during his walk through the streets. Naruto's eyes narrowed slightly. Why is there only one? The Hokage's gaze darkened. There was a massacre, he said quietly. The Uchiha clan was wiped out by one of their own. Naruto processed the words carefully. A clan strong enough to rival the entire village, gone. That was not the kind of event that happened naturally. There was more to this story than what was being told. But he let it go, for now. Instead, he nodded. Fine. Sarutobi closed the folder. You will meet your team tomorrow. Report to Training Ground 3 in the morning. Naruto turned toward the door, but before he could take a step, the Hokage spoke again. Where will you stay? Naruto glanced over his shoulder. I'll find a place. Sarutobi hesitated for a moment before sighing. Take this. A key slid across the desk. Naruto raised an eyebrow. The apartment your parents left behind, the old man said simply. Naruto remained still. His parents. He had never met them. They were ghosts, shadows of a past he had never known. And yet, the weight of the key in front of him felt heavier than it should have. Slowly, he reached out, taking it. Sarutobi watched him carefully. No matter what has happened, Naruto, you are still of this village. That will never change. Naruto said nothing. He turned and walked out, leaving the words behind. The apartment was small. Dust coated the wooden floors, and the air was stale with disuse. Naruto stepped inside, his sharp eyes scanning the space. A single futon rested in the corner, an old table in the center, shelves lined with untouched scrolls and books. He moved further in, his fingers brushing against the walls, against a life that had never been his. This place should have been his home. But it wasn't. Not yet. Setting his katana down beside the futon, Naruto sat, exhaling slowly. His body was tense, his mind alert. He did not belong here, he knew that much. But if Konoha expected him to slip into the role of a shinobi, to bow his head and play the part of a lost son returned home, they would be sorely mistaken. Tomorrow, he would meet his team. And the village would begin to see just how much had changed. Dawn came quietly. The early morning mist curled through the streets of Konoha, and the village slowly stirred to life. Naruto stood on the rooftop of his apartment, the wind tugging at his cloak. His katana rested against his back, its weight a familiar comfort. The headband of Konoha sat upon his brow, but he still wasn't sure if it truly belonged there. Training Ground 3. He had memorized the village's layout the night before, mapping the streets in his mind. His instincts demanded that he know every possible exit, every blind spot, every high ground that could be used to his advantage. That was how he had survived in the land of iron. He would not abandon those instincts now. With a final breath, he leapt from the rooftop, landing softly on the street below. Training Ground 3 was quiet when he arrived. The clearing was surrounded by towering trees, a small river cutting through one side. 3 wooden training posts stood in the center, weathered by years of use. Naruto scanned the area. 2 figures were already waiting. The first was a boy his age, dressed in dark blue with the Uchiha fan emblazoned on his back. His black hair was spiked slightly at the back, and his arms were crossed as he leaned against one of the wooden posts. His eyes, dark and unreadable, flickered toward Naruto the moment he arrived. Sasuke Uchiha, the last of his clan. The second was a girl with short pink hair, tapping her foot impatiently. Her green eyes brightened when she noticed Naruto, but then quickly narrowed in confusion. Sakura Haruno. Naruto met their gazes evenly but said nothing. Sasuke stared at him for a moment longer before looking away, disinterested. Sakura, on the other hand, frowned. "Who are you?" she asked, arms crossing. Naruto tilted his head slightly. "Naruto Uzumaki." Sakura blinked. "Uzumaki. But I thought." She stopped herself, realization flashing in her eyes. Naruto smirked faintly. So they had heard of him. Before she could say anything else, the air shifted. A presence, subtle yet undeniable, appeared behind them. Naruto turned his head slightly, his muscles tensing. He hadn't sensed anyone approaching. That was unusual. The silver-haired man standing behind them was dressed in a standard Jonin uniform, his forehead protector tilted to cover one eye. The lower half of his face was hidden behind a mask, leaving only a single sharp eye visible. Kakashi Hatake. Naruto studied him carefully. His stance was casual, but there was an undeniable weight behind his presence. A man who moved without sound, who appeared without warning, this was not someone to be underestimated. Kakashi's visible eye curved slightly in amusement. "Well," he said lazily, "you're all early. That's new." Naruto didn't miss the way Kakashi's gaze lingered on him for a fraction of a second longer than the others. The man was assessing him, weighing something in his mind. Sasuke remained silent. Sakura, however, sighed. "Sensei, we've been waiting for an hour." Kakashi tilted his head. "Ah, my bad. You see, a black cat crossed my path, and I had to take the long way around." Sakura twitched. "Liar." Naruto remained silent, watching. Kakashi clapped his hands together. "Well, since we're all here, why don't we start with introductions?" Sakura blinked. "Introductions?" Kakashi nodded. "Your name, likes, dislikes, dreams for the future. You know, the usual." Sakura brightened. "Oh, I'll go first. My name is Sakura Haruno. I like." She glanced toward Sasuke with a small blush. "I dislike Ino Pig, and my dream is." She hesitated before giggling. Naruto resisted the urge to roll his eyes. Kakashi nodded. "All right, next." Sasuke pushed off the training post, shoving his hands into his pockets. "Sasuke Uchiha. There are a lot of things I dislike. I don't particularly like anything. My ambition," his eyes darkened slightly, "is to kill a certain man." Naruto watched him carefully. The way his hands clenched slightly, the controlled fury in his voice. This was not just vengeance. This was something deeper. Kakashi hummed. Heavy. Alright, next. Naruto exhaled. Naruto Uzumaki. Sakura tilted her head slightly. What do you like? Naruto's fingers brushed against the hilt of his katana. My blade. Sasuke's gaze flickered toward the sword. Kakashi raised an eyebrow. And dislikes. Naruto's expression didn't change. Weakness. A brief silence. Kakashi studied him for a moment before speaking again. And your dream? Naruto's eyes met his evenly. To carve my name into this world. Kakashi's visible eye narrowed slightly. Sakura shifted uncomfortably. Sasuke remained silent. Kakashi hummed thoughtfully. Interesting. Naruto knew what he had just revealed. He wasn't like the others. He had not grown up in Konoha's sheltered embrace. His words carried weight. Not the dream of a child, but the declaration of a warrior. And he could tell Kakashi had noticed. The silver-haired Jonin stretched slightly. Well then, now that we know each other a little better, let's move on to the real test. Sakura frowned. Test? But we already passed the academy exams. Kakashi smiled beneath his mask. Oh, that was just to weed out those who weren't worth my time. Sasuke's eyes narrowed. Naruto remained still. Kakashi pulled out a small silver clock, placing it on a nearby rock. This is a survival test, he explained. Your real exam. You have until noon to take one of these. He lifted his hand, revealing two small bells. Sakura blinked. There are only two. Kakashi nodded cheerfully. That's right. Which means, one of you is going back to the academy. Silence. Sasuke's jaw tightened slightly. Sakura paled. Naruto simply stared. A test with limited success. A battle where one must fail. His fingers twitched slightly. Interesting. Kakashi's visible eye curved again. Alright then. He lifted his hands in a lazy gesture. Come at me. Naruto's grip on his katana tightened slightly as Kakashi's words hung in the air. He studied the Jonin's stance, completely relaxed, almost indifferent. But Naruto wasn't fooled. This man had appeared behind them without a sound, his presence a whisper against the senses. A warrior like that was never truly unguarded. Sasuke reacted first, his body tensing as he took a step forward. His sharp eyes were locked onto the bells, his hand subtly shifting toward his kunai pouch. Sakura hesitated, glancing between the two of them. Wait, sensei, isn't this a bit unfair? She asked. Kakashi tilted his head. Oh, there are three of us, but only two bells. She pointed out. Doesn't that mean one of us has to fail? Kakashi's visible eye curved slightly. Exactly. Sakura frowned. But, her words were cut off as Sasuke suddenly moved. A blur of motion, his hand flicked forward, a kunai cutting through the air toward Kakashi's head. Naruto barely saw Kakashi shift. The silver-haired Jonin leaned just enough for the kunai to pass by his face harmlessly. His hand moved lazily, plucking the spinning blade from the air with his fingers. Oh, Kakashi mused, glancing at Sasuke. Starting off strong. Sasuke didn't respond. The moment the kunai missed, he dashed forward, his speed impressive for a genin. His movements were sharp, precise, well-trained. Naruto watched carefully as Sasuke closed the distance, already analyzing the fight. But then Kakashi disappeared. 1 second he was standing there, and in the next, he was gone. Sasuke skidded to a stop, his eyes widening slightly. Naruto, however, had already moved. His body twisted, instinct taking over as he spun, katana flashing out in a controlled arc. Steel met flesh, only for Kakashi to vanish in a puff of smoke. A shadow clone. Naruto landed smoothly, his eyes darting around the field. Sasuke cursed under his breath, leaping back to reassess. Sakura was still frozen in place, her eyes flickering between them in shock. A chuckle drifted through the clearing. Not bad, Kakashi's voice mused. You two react quickly. Naruto exhaled slowly, calming his pulse. His fingers flexed against his sword's hilt. That had been fast. Kakashi's skill was far beyond what he had expected. If they weren't careful, they'd be toyed with until time ran out. Naruto's gaze flickered toward Sasuke. The Uchiha had realized the same thing. His posture was lower now, his muscles tensed, his mind working. Naruto met his eyes for half a second. No words were spoken. But the message was clear. Temporary truce. Sasuke smirked faintly, barely perceptible, before turning away. Naruto followed his lead. Kakashi was strong. Too strong for them to handle alone. That much was obvious. But Naruto had been raised as a warrior. He knew that victory wasn't always about individual strength. It was about adaptability. And this test wasn't just about strength. Naruto exhaled. Sakura. She blinked. Huh. Stay back, he said simply. Before she could respond, Naruto was already moving again. This time, he and Sasuke attacked together. Dash dash dash. Kakashi hummed as he watched them move. Interesting. The Uchiha was expected. Tactical, disciplined, fueled by something deeper than just ambition. His movements were refined, his reactions precise. A true shinobi. But Naruto, that was something else entirely. The blonde's body flowed differently, his footwork was sharper, more grounded. His grip on his weapon was firm but relaxed, his swings powerful yet controlled. Not a shinobi's style, a samurai's. Kakashi narrowed his eyes slightly as he parried Sasuke's kunai with ease, twisting just enough to avoid Naruto's blade. The katana whistled past him, the force behind it sharp and efficient. Fascinating. Kakashi leaned back, letting both boys pass before flipping onto a tree branch. He tapped his chin thoughtfully. You two aren't bad, he mused. Good teamwork. Good instincts. Naruto exhaled, rolling his shoulders as he adjusted his stance. Kakashi's eye curved in amusement. But, he flickered. Naruto's instincts screamed. Behind. He spun, katana flashing up. But Kakashi was already there, 2 fingers extended. A light tap on his forehead. Naruto barely had time to react before his vision tilted, his feet lifted off the ground as an invisible force sent him flying backward. He twisted midair, landing in a crouch. A genjutsu? No, something else. Naruto's eyes narrowed as he looked up. Kakashi stood where he had been, still relaxed, still unreadable. But there was something sharper in his gaze now. You're strong, Kakashi said simply. But strength alone isn't enough. Naruto exhaled. This man, he wasn't just strong. He was toying with them. Naruto glanced at Sasuke, who had also been knocked back. Sakura was frozen in place, unsure of what to do. The bells still hung from Kakashi's belt, untouched. Time was running out. Naruto tightened his grip. They needed a new plan. And fast. Naruto took a slow breath, steadying his pulse. Kakashi was stronger than he had anticipated. The man's reactions were beyond anything he had faced before, not just fast, but effortless. Every movement calculated, every counter executed with complete precision. He had faced strong opponents in the land of iron, but Kakashi wasn't just strong. He was something else entirely. Naruto had no doubt. This was the difference between a child and a true warrior. Sasuke pushed himself up from where he had landed, his teeth clenched in frustration. He was breathing heavily, but his eyes burned with determination. His gaze flickered to Naruto. For the first time, there was no arrogance in them. Only acknowledgement. Naruto returned the look briefly before shifting his attention back to Kakashi. The bells still jingled lightly from the Jonin's belt, taunting them. Naruto's mind worked quickly. The only way they could hope to get those bells was if they stopped thinking like shinobi. They had to think like warriors. Sasuke, Naruto said quietly. The Uchiha glanced at him. Naruto flicked his gaze toward the trees. Sasuke's lips pressed together in understanding. A distraction. Without another word, Naruto vanished into the shadows of the forest. Sasuke wasted no time. He rushed forward, kunai in hand, his Sharingan-less eyes still sharp. He had already seen Kakashi's movements once, he wouldn't make the same mistake again. Kakashi sighed, slipping a small orange book from his pouch and flipping it open with one hand. Rushing in again, he mused, not even looking up. Didn't we already? Sasuke attacked. The speed of his approach was faster this time, his body moving lower, sharper. His kunai flashed toward Kakashi's chest, only to be blocked by a single finger. Kakashi's visible eye curved into an amused crescent as he held Sasuke's wrist in place effortlessly. Predictable. Sasuke's eyes widened slightly. That was when the second attack came. A sharp whistle through the air. Steel. Kakashi twisted just in time to see the glint of a katana slicing toward him from the side, aimed perfectly for the bells at his waist. Naruto moved like a shadow, his blade slicing through the air with practiced precision. He had timed his strike perfectly, waiting until Kakashi was fully engaged with Sasuke. For the first time, Kakashi's eye widened slightly. Naruto's attack was fast. Too fast. The Jonin leaned back at the last possible second, barely avoiding the edge of the blade. The bells chimed as the wind from Naruto's swing passed through them. A fraction of an inch closer, and he would have had them. Kakashi twisted, disengaging from Sasuke and vanishing into the trees. Naruto landed in a crouch, his sword humming from the force of the swing. Sasuke was already beside him, breathing slightly heavier. That almost worked, he admitted begrudgingly. Naruto exhaled. Not close enough. Sasuke scowled, but he didn't disagree. They both turned, scanning the treetops. Kakashi had vanished completely, his presence hidden once more. Sasuke tensed. Where? The ground beneath them exploded. Naruto's instincts screamed. He moved, leaping back just as the dirt erupted in a cloud of debris. A hand shot up from underground, grabbing Sasuke's ankle. Sasuke barely had time to react before he was yanked downward, his body half buried in the earth up to his neck. Naruto landed a few feet away, skidding to a stop. Kakashi emerged from the ground, dusting off his vest casually. Rule number 1, he mused, a shinobi must always look underneath the underneath. Sasuke grit his teeth, struggling against the earth holding him in place. Kakashi turned toward Naruto. Naruto didn't move. He exhaled slowly, tightening his grip on his katana. This wasn't working. Fighting Kakashi directly wouldn't get them anywhere. The man was faster, stronger, and, most importantly, miles ahead of them in experience. Naruto wasn't foolish enough to believe he could defeat someone like that head-on. But he wasn't trying to win. He was trying to pass. His eyes flickered toward the bells. A realization settled into his mind. Naruto's grip loosened slightly. His stance shifted. Not into an attack posture, but into something else. Kakashi's eye narrowed slightly. Giving up. Naruto tilted his head. No. Then he sheathed his sword. Silence. Even Sasuke looked up in confusion. Kakashi watched him carefully. Naruto exhaled. This isn't a test of strength. Kakashi's expression didn't change. Oh, if it was, Naruto continued, we would have failed the moment it started. His voice was calm. Kakashi said nothing. Naruto took a step forward. We can't beat you, he said simply. Not like this. Sasuke scowled. What are you? Naruto ignored him. His gaze remained locked on Kakashi. He lifted a hand, and extended it. A gesture. An offering. Sasuke's eyes widened slightly. Kakashi's expression remained unreadable. Naruto met his gaze evenly. You're testing our ability to work together. Kakashi was silent for a long moment. Then, a slow chuckle. It started quiet, amused. Then Kakashi full-on laughed. Sasuke looked between them, frowning. What the hell is so funny? Kakashi exhaled, shaking his head slightly. His visible eye curved in something almost resembling approval. Well, he mused, you're not as clueless as I thought. He reached into his pouch and pulled out the bells. Then, he tossed one toward Naruto. Naruto caught it easily. The second, was tossed to Sasuke. Sakura, still standing frozen in the distance, blinked. Wait. Kakashi turned toward her, hands in his pockets. Sorry, Sakura, he said, though there was no malice in his tone. Looks like you're the odd one out. Her face paled. But, Kakashi smiled beneath his mask. And what happens to those who fail? Silence. Sakura swallowed. They get sent back to the academy. Kakashi's expression remained the same. Then he held up a single finger. And pointed. At Naruto. Eat. Naruto blinked. Sasuke frowned. Sakura froze. What? Kakashi gestured lazily. Feed her. Naruto glanced at Sasuke. Sasuke looked back at him, then at the food in his hand. Then, without a word, he moved. Naruto followed his lead. A few moments later, Sakura sat between them, staring down at the rice ball Naruto had placed in her hands. Her fingers trembled slightly. Kakashi watched them carefully. Then, a slow, approving nod. Good. In a blink, he was gone. His voice drifted from the trees. Team 7, passes. The words settled over them like a slow burning realization. Sakura stared down at the food in her hands, her lips parted slightly. We passed. Naruto exhaled, rolling his shoulders as the tension finally left his body. Looks like it. Sasuke clicked his tongue, glancing at the trees where Kakashi had disappeared. That bastard was messing with us the whole time. Naruto didn't disagree. But even so, he had learned something valuable. This was the world of shinobi. The rules were different here. Naruto had spent years honing his skills in the land of iron, training under warriors who lived by the code of Bushido. Strength, discipline, and honor were everything. But here, in the shinobi world, strength alone wasn't enough. Deception, strategy, teamwork, these things mattered just as much, if not more. Naruto would have to adapt. Sasuke stood, dusting himself off. TCH. At least now we can finally move on. Sakura blinked, still processing everything. Then she smiled slightly. I guess, we're really a team now. Naruto didn't respond. A team. That word sat strangely with him. He had spent his whole life as an outsider, even among the samurai who had raised him. He had been respected, trained, but never truly included. Now, for the first time, he had something different. Not just comrades, but teammates. The thought was unfamiliar. And yet, not unwelcome. Kakashi watched them from a distance, his expression unreadable. Naruto Uzumaki. There was something different about him. Not just his skills, the way he moved, the way he fought. That was obvious enough. He wasn't trained as a shinobi, but as a warrior. His reactions, his instincts, his discipline, it was all different from the standard shinobi way. But that wasn't what caught Kakashi's attention the most. It was the way Naruto thought. He hadn't rushed in blindly like most genin. He had observed, analyzed, and adapted. He had realized the truth of the test faster than either of his teammates. And more than that, he had chosen to extend his hand. Kakashi hummed, tapping his chin. Naruto was going to be interesting. Very interesting. The next few days passed in a blur. Team 7 was officially recognized as a genin squad, and with that recognition came their first missions. D-rank missions. The lowest tier of assignments, meant for new genin to build teamwork and discipline. And they were absolutely miserable. Naruto scowled, gripping the squirming body of a fat, overgrown cat as it yelled and clawed at his arms. TCH. Stupid thing. Sasuke stood beside him, looking equally unimpressed. Sakura sighed, adjusting her hair as she wiped sweat from her brow. Well, at least we caught it. Naruto's eye twitched as the cat sank its claws deeper into his sleeve. Yeah, great. After all the training, all the preparation, all the effort, this was what they were doing. Catching lost pets, pulling weeds, helping old ladies carry groceries. Naruto exhaled sharply. He had trained his whole life for battle. He had honed his swordsmanship to the point of mastery. And now, he was stuck playing errand boy. It was frustrating. More than frustrating. It was humiliating. But Naruto wasn't the only one irritated. Sasuke's scowl deepened with every new mission, his patience wearing thin. Even Sakura, who usually tried to stay optimistic, was beginning to lose her enthusiasm. And Kakashi, the man just smiled beneath his mask, as if he found their suffering amusing. Naruto clenched his jaw. If this was what it meant to be a shinobi, he wasn't sure how much longer he could stand it. A few more days passed, and Naruto's patience was running out. Their missions remained the same. Menial tasks, pointless errands. No challenge, no purpose, no combat. This wasn't what he had trained for. And then, everything changed. They were back at the Hokage's office, standing before Hiruzen Sarutobi as he flipped through a scroll of upcoming missions. And next, the old man said, "We have another D-rank mission. The Inoue family needs assistance repairing their fence." Naruto stepped forward. Enough. The room went silent. Sakura's eyes widened. Sasuke turned his head slightly, watching Naruto carefully. Kakashi raised a brow. Hiruzen blinked, looking up from the scroll. Oh. Naruto's fists clenched. These missions are pointless. His voice was sharp, firm. We're shinobi, not laborers. If you're going to send us on missions, then give us something real. The old Hokage studied him for a long moment. Then, a small smile. I see, Hiruzen said. You feel you are ready for something more substantial. Naruto's expression didn't waver. I know we are. Sasuke smirked slightly. Sakura hesitated, but seeing the determination in Naruto's eyes, she swallowed her doubts and stood firm. Hiruzen exhaled through his nose. Very well. He turned to a nearby table, picking up a different scroll. This one was marked with a different seal, higher ranked. If you desire a greater challenge, Hiruzen said, then I have just the mission for you. Naruto's fingers twitched. Finally, a real mission. Hiruzen handed the scroll to Kakashi, who unrolled it with a lazy flick of his wrist. His visible eye scanned the contents before curving slightly in amusement. Well, he mused, this should be interesting. Naruto's heartbeat quickened. Their first real mission. He had no idea what awaited them. But one thing was certain. This was only the beginning. The mission was a C-rank escort assignment. Their client was a man named Tazuna, an old bridge builder from the land of waves. The job was simple. Accompany him to his home village and ensure his safety until his bridge was completed. At least, that was how it was supposed to be. Naruto had an uneasy feeling from the start. Tazuna's behavior was strange. He was jittery, avoiding eye contact when Hiruzen had asked about possible threats. His hands trembled slightly when he spoke, and the way he kept glancing at Kakashi, it wasn't the look of a man who felt completely safe. Naruto didn't trust it, but Kakashi accepted the mission without issue, so Naruto held his tongue. They set out the next morning. The road leading to the land of waves was peaceful at first. The forest was thick, but the air was crisp. Birds chirped in the distance, and the scent of damp earth lingered from the previous night's rain. Naruto walked near the back of the formation, his sword strapped to his waist, fingers resting lightly on the hilt. His mind was quiet, senses sharp. Sasuke was at the front, hands in his pockets but eyes scanning the surroundings carefully. Sakura walked beside Tazuna, occasionally glancing toward Kakashi, who led the group with his usual lazy stride. For the first hour, everything was uneventful. Then, Naruto's eyes narrowed. Something was wrong. A puddle. It wasn't supposed to be there. The road had been dry since morning, the sun shining clearly overhead. No recent rainfall. And yet, there it was. Naruto slowed his steps, muscles coiling. He wasn't the only one who noticed. Sasuke's shoulders tensed slightly. His fingers twitched toward his kunai pouch. Kakashi did nothing. Naruto frowned. Then, movement. The puddle exploded. Two figures shot out from the water, chains flashing. Naruto moved instantly, unsheathing his sword in a single, fluid motion. The first attacker lunged at Kakashi. And in the blink of an eye, chains wrapped around the Jonin's body. A sharp tug, and Kakashi was torn apart. Naruto's breath caught for a fraction of a second. Then, a flicker of movement. The second attacker was coming for Tazuna. Naruto reacted. Steel met steel. The force of the impact sent vibrations up his arm. The attacker snarled, pushing against Naruto's blade, trying to overpower him. Naruto didn't budge. His footing was firm, his grip steady. Then, a sharp whistle through the air. Kunai. Sasuke struck from the side, his blade slicing toward the enemy's ribs. The attacker barely twisted in time, avoiding a fatal blow. But not completely. A shallow cut bloomed across his side. He hissed, retreating in a blur. Sakura had pulled Tazuna back, her hands clenched around a kunai, shaking slightly but standing her ground. Naruto didn't lower his sword. Something wasn't right. If Kakashi had really been killed that easily, then he wasn't Kakashi. As if on cue, a voice from the trees. Nicely done. Naruto didn't turn his head. But he didn't need to. Kakashi was perched casually on a tree branch, eye curved in amusement. The body that had been torn apart melted into nothing, revealing only a shredded log. A substitution. The two attackers tensed. Kakashi vanished. He reappeared behind them in an instant. A single strike. And it was over. Both attackers collapsed, unconscious. The silence that followed was heavy. Naruto exhaled, finally lowering his blade. Kakashi stepped forward, crouching beside one of the downed enemies. His voice was calm. They're from the hidden mist. Naruto frowned. Why would shinobi from the mist be here? Tazuna swallowed audibly. Kakashi didn't look at him, but his tone carried weight. Anything you want to tell us? Tazuna hesitated. Then, a sigh. Alright, fine. I lied. Naruto's grip tightened. Tazuna rubbed his face. This mission isn't actually AC rank. Sakura inhaled sharply. What? The old man grimaced. I couldn't afford a higher rank mission, but I needed protection. The truth is, a dangerous man wants me dead. Kakashi's eye darkened. Who? Tazuna's throat bobbed. Gato. Naruto's fingers twitched. Sasuke's eyes narrowed. Gato. A ruthless businessman. A man who had built his empire on corruption, smuggling, and blood. He had taken over the land of waves, bleeding it dry with his wealth and hired mercenaries. And now, he had sent shinobi to kill Tazuna. Kakashi sighed, rubbing his temple. So, this is technically a B rank mission. Tazuna winced. Maybe A rank. Sakura looked ready to explode. You tricked us. Naruto didn't react. Instead, he looked at Kakashi. What now? Kakashi regarded him carefully. This wasn't what they had signed up for. The smart thing to do would be to turn back. To report the deception and let the Hokage decide what came next. But, that wasn't what Kakashi asked. Are you scared? Naruto blinked. Then, a slow exhale. He met Kakashi's gaze evenly. No. Kakashi's eye curved slightly. Then he turned to the others. We have a choice, he said. We can go back, or we can see this mission through. Silence. Then, Tazuna spoke. If you leave, my people will suffer. His voice was quiet. But if you stay, you'll be putting yourselves in danger. Naruto's fingers curled around his sword. A true test. Not another training exercise. Not another meaningless task. A real battle. Real stakes. Naruto closed his eyes briefly. Then, he stepped forward. We continue. Sasuke smirked slightly. HMPH. As if I'd back down now. Sakura hesitated, then squared her shoulders. Fine. Kakashi watched them carefully. Then, he smiled. All right. They had made their choice. Now, there was no turning back. The decision was made. No turning back. Tazuna exhaled in visible relief, but the tension in the air remained thick. The two shinobi they had defeated were bound and left unconscious at the base of a tree. Kakashi had ensured they wouldn't be waking up anytime soon. Still, Naruto's grip on his sword remained tight. The fight had been too easy. If Gato had hired shinobi from the mist, then this was just the beginning. They resumed their journey, but the atmosphere had changed. Sakura was more alert, her hands never straying far from her kunai pouch. Sasuke's eyes darted toward every shadow, every rustling leaf. Even Kakashi, who had always seemed so laid back, now moved with a quiet sharpness. Naruto welcomed the shift. This was what he had trained for. Hours passed. The forest thinned, and soon, the scent of saltwater filled the air. The land of waves was close. Then, a chill ran down Naruto's spine. His hand shot to his sword. Kakashi stopped walking. His eye flicked toward the trees. Then, a single word. Duck. Naruto reacted instantly. The air screamed. Something massive cleaved through the space where they had just stood, carving into the trunk of a thick tree with brutal force. Wood splintered, and for a moment, nothing moved. Then the weapon embedded in the bark trembled. A massive, jagged blade. A sword. Naruto's heart pounded. He knew that weapon. And the man who wielded it. Slowly, a figure appeared on a branch above them. Tall, cloaked in mist, a bandaged face, sharp eyes, and the presence of a predator. Momochi Zabuza, the demon of the hidden mist. His voice was rough, laced with amusement. Well, his eyes locked onto Kakashi. You're a long way from home, copy ninja. The tension was suffocating. Kakashi's stance remained relaxed, but Naruto could see it. The shift in his posture. The flicker of calculation behind his single visible eye. This wasn't some hired thug. This wasn't a low-level assassin. This was a true warrior. Zabuza grinned, pulling his massive sword from the tree with a single motion. Hand over the old man, he said, resting the blade on his shoulder. Or. His grip tightened. I start cutting. Naruto exhaled slowly. This was it. A true test. A true battle. Kakashi took a step forward, raising his headband with deliberate slowness. His voice was quiet. Team. The Sharingan gleamed in the fading light. Stay sharp. Then, the mist rose. The air grew thick. Cold. The mist coiled around them, swallowing the trees, the ground, the sky, everything. Naruto's grip on his sword tightened. His breath slowed, muscles coiling like a spring. Every instinct screamed at him. Predator. He couldn't see Zabuza anymore. Could barely see his own teammates. The mist wasn't natural, it carried chakra. A hunter's tool. Kakashi's voice cut through the silence. Don't panic. Focus on your other senses. Sasuke's breath was controlled but sharp. TCH, this isn't normal mist. Of course not. Zabuza's voice echoed from everywhere at once. Naruto narrowed his eyes. He was toying with them. Then, a whisper of movement. Naruto twisted. His blade flashed. Steel met steel. A brutal impact. Zabuza loomed before him, his massive sword pressing down, forcing Naruto back. The man's eyes gleamed through the mist. Good reflexes, kid. Naruto gritted his teeth. He pushed back, feet sliding against the damp earth. Then, a flicker of silver. Kunai. Sasuke struck from the side, aiming for Zabuza's ribs. But, the attack never landed. Water. Zabuza's body rippled. Then it burst. A clone. Naruto barely had time to react before the real Zabuza materialized behind him. Too fast. The massive sword swung. Naruto ducked. The blade missed him by a breath, carving deep into the tree behind him. But Zabuza wasn't done. A foot slammed into Naruto's chest. The force sent him flying. He twisted midair, flipping to absorb the impact, but still skidded across the damp ground, coughing as the hit rattled his ribs. Too strong. Too fast. Sasuke leapt at Zabuza again, kunai flashing. Zabuza smirked. Another clone intercepted. Sasuke's blade sank into water. Then, the real Zabuza appeared. Behind Kakashi. His sword flashed. Kakashi vanished. A blur of motion. The next instant, Zabuza was the one retreating. Kakashi stood where he had been, kunai in hand, the Sharingan gleaming. Zabuza's expression shifted. Ah, the infamous eye. Naruto pushed himself up, exhaling slowly. Kakashi's voice was quiet. Sasuke. Naruto. Protect Tazuna. Naruto clenched his jaw. He wanted to fight. But, he understood. Zabuza wasn't just another enemy. He was a monster. Only Kakashi could face him. Sasuke moved toward Tazuna, positioning himself between the old man and the battlefield. Naruto did the same. Zabuza smirked. Well then. His grip tightened on his blade. Kakashi's stance shifted. The mist thickened. Then, the real battle began. The mist swallowed everything. Naruto could barely see a few feet in front of him. His grip on his sword remained firm, his breath steady. He focused. Not on sight, but on sound. The rustling of the wind, the shifting of the trees, the faintest disturbances in the air. A sudden clash of steel rang through the fog. Kakashi and Zabuza had engaged. The sounds came in rapid succession, metal striking metal, swift movements, the dull thuds of impacts. Naruto forced himself to stay still. Trust Kakashi. Their mission was to guard Tazuna. Sasuke stood beside him, body tense. His Sharingan wasn't fully developed yet, but even he could sense it. The killing intent. It pressed down on them like a physical weight, seeping through the mist, curling around their throats like an invisible hand. Then, Tazuna stiffened. Naruto reacted instantly. He twisted, blade flashing. A kunai clashed against his sword. A figure had emerged from the mist. Not Zabuza. A masked shinobi. Smaller. Faster. Naruto's feet slid back from the impact. His mind processed everything at once, the enemy's movements, their weapon, their stance. Not a mercenary. A trained assassin. The masked shinobi darted back, vanishing into the mist. Naruto didn't hesitate. He lunged after them. Sasuke called his name, but Naruto was already moving. The mist curled around him, blurring the world into shifting shadows. Then, a whisper of breath. Behind. Naruto spun. His blade cut through the air. But met nothing. A feint. The assassin struck from the side, a Senbon needle flashing toward his neck. Naruto twisted at the last second. The needle grazed his skin. Pain flared, but he ignored it. He countered. A precise strike, aimed for the masked shinobi's ribs. They barely dodged. Fast. Too fast. Naruto exhaled sharply, steadying himself. This wasn't just an assassin. This was a true warrior. A hunter. The mist swirled around them, thickening again. The assassin's voice was quiet, almost gentle. You fight well. Naruto didn't respond. Words didn't matter. Only actions. His grip tightened. Then, they clashed again. Steel met steel in a flurry of sparks. Naruto moved instinctively, each strike faster than the last. His sword clashed against the masked shinobi's Senbon, their movements fluid, precise, two warriors dancing in the mist. He could feel it now. This opponent wasn't just a hired blade. Their movements were too refined. Too disciplined. A true shinobi. Naruto's mind processed everything in rapid flashes, their stance, the way they shifted weight, the subtle precision of their counters. Mist-style combat. Then it clicked. This wasn't just an assassin. This was a mist hunter nin. The realization sharpened his focus. If they were trained to hunt rogue ninja, then they had experience fighting warriors stronger than him. But that didn't matter. Naruto had fought against the swordsmen of the Land of Iron. He had fought samurai who moved like shadows, who could end battles in a single stroke. This was no different. The masked shinobi darted forward again, faster this time. A feint left, then a real strike from below. Naruto anticipated it. His sword flicked downward, intercepting the attack. The clash sent vibrations up his arm, but he didn't waver. Instead, he countered. A swift strike toward the masked shinobi's shoulder. But they twisted, dodging by a hair's breadth. Their eyes met through the mist. For a moment, the fight slowed. A pause. The assassin exhaled. Who trained you? Naruto didn't answer. He lunged. Their weapons clashed again, the force sending ripples through the mist. Then, the hunter nin flipped back, putting distance between them. A new tension filled the air. The fight had changed. Naruto could sense it. The assassin had been testing him. Now, they were done holding back. The mist thickened, coiling around them like living shadows. Then, they vanished. Naruto's pulse slowed. He closed his eyes. He didn't need sight. He listened. The shift of fabric. The whisper of movement. There. He moved before the strike landed. Their weapons met once more. But this time, Naruto pushed forward. He wouldn't lose. The force of Naruto's push sent the masked shinobi skidding back, feet sliding against the damp earth. He didn't let up. Naruto dashed forward, his sword flashing in the mist. A diagonal strike aimed at their chest, swift, precise. But, the hunter nin twisted, their agility inhuman. They leaned back just enough for the blade to pass inches from their mask. Then they countered. A Senbon needle, faster than before, aimed at Naruto's throat. Too close. Naruto barely had time to react. He jerked his head to the side. The needle scraped past his cheek, drawing a thin line of blood. Pain flared, but he ignored it. Instead, he stepped in. His sword struck like lightning. A shallow cut across their sleeve. The first real hit. A shift in the air. For the first time, the hunter nin hesitated. Naruto saw it. The briefest flicker of uncertainty. He pressed forward, refusing to let them regain control. His blade carved through the mist again, his strikes relentless. Each one forced them back. For the first time, they were on the defensive. Their movements, once fluid, now carried the slightest tension. Naruto could feel it. He was pushing them, winning. Then, the mist thickened once more. A new presence filled the air. Naruto's pulse slowed. This chakra, strong, heavy. Zabuza. Naruto didn't hesitate. He stepped back, eyes narrowing. This fight wasn't just between him and the masked shinobi anymore. The battlefield had shifted. In the distance, he could hear the echoes of Kakashi's battle with Zabuza. The clashes of steel, the surging of chakra, the quiet intensity of two warriors locked in combat. He had to decide. Keep fighting this masked shinobi. Or return to his team. His grip tightened on his sword. The hunter nin straightened, their breath steady despite the small cut on their sleeve. Their voice was quiet. You're strong. Then, a flicker of movement. They leapt back, vanishing into the mist. Disengaging. Naruto exhaled slowly. They were gone. For now, he turned toward the battlefield. He had no time to rest. Zabuza was still alive, and Kakashi was fighting alone. Naruto sprinted forward, vanishing into the mist. The mist thickened, shrouding the forest in an impenetrable veil. Naruto sprinted through the haze, senses heightened, every nerve alert to the dangers lurking within. He could hear the distant clashes of steel, the fierce battle between Kakashi and Zabuza. The air was heavy with chakra, the oppressive presence of two formidable shinobi locked in combat. Naruto's thoughts raced. He had faced the masked hunter nin, a skilled adversary, but now his priority was clear. He had to support his team and protect Tazuna. As he neared the source of the battle, the silhouettes of his comrades emerged through the fog. Sasuke stood guard beside Tazuna, eyes sharp, kunai at the ready. Sakura was close by, her stance defensive, every muscle tense. Naruto skidded to a halt beside them, breathing heavily. Naruto. Sakura's voice was a mix of relief and urgency. Are you okay? He nodded, wiping a trickle of blood from his cheek. I'm fine. Where's Kakashi-sensei? Sasuke's gaze flickered toward the densest part of the mist. He's engaged with Zabuza. It's intense. Naruto's grip tightened on his sword. He knew the severity of the situation. Zabuza Momochi, the demon of the hidden mist, was a notorious assassin, a former member of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist. His skills were legendary, and even Kakashi, with his Sharingan, faced a formidable challenge. Sight turn 0 search 13. Suddenly, A surge of chakra pulsed through the air, followed by a sharp cry of pain. Naruto's heart clenched. He recognized that voice. Kakashi-sensei. Without hesitation, Naruto dashed toward the source of the sound, ignoring Sakura's shout to stay back. The mist seemed to thicken with each step, but he pressed on, driven by determination and fear for his mentor. As he broke through the dense fog, the scene before him made his blood run cold. Kakashi was on one knee, breathing heavily, a deep gash across his chest. His Sharingan eye was exposed, but blood trickled down, partially obscuring its vision. Before him stood Zabuza, his massive blade gleaming with fresh blood, a sinister grin on his face. "You're persistent, copy ninja," Zabuza sneered, his voice dripping with malice. But this is where it ends. Rage and fear surged through Naruto. He couldn't let this happen. Get away from him. Naruto charged, chakra flaring, his sword poised to strike. Zabuza's eyes flicked toward the approaching genin, a look of annoyance crossing his features. Another brat rushing to his death. As Naruto closed the distance, Zabuza swung his massive sword with lethal precision. But Naruto was ready. He ducked under the arc of the blade, feeling the rush of air as it passed overhead. With a swift movement, he slashed at Zabuza's midsection. Zabuza leapt back, avoiding the full brunt of the attack, but Naruto's blade grazed his side, drawing blood. The rogue ninja's eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed in fury. "You'll pay for that, you little." Before he could finish, Kakashi surged forward, exploiting the momentary distraction. With a burst of speed, he drove a kunai into Zabuza's shoulder, forcing a grunt of pain from the assassin. "Naruto, now!" Kakashi shouted, his voice strained but commanding. Naruto didn't hesitate. Channeling his chakra, he formed the familiar hand signs. Shadow Clone Jutsu. In an instant, multiple clones of Naruto surrounded Zabuza, each brandishing a weapon, eyes blazing with determination. Zabuza snarled, blood dripping from his wounds. "You think these cheap tricks can stop me?" But the combined assault of the Narutos was relentless. They attacked from all sides, forcing Zabuza to defend desperately, his movements growing sluggish from blood loss and exhaustion. Kakashi seized the opportunity. Gathering his remaining strength, he formed the hand signs for his signature technique. Lightning Blade. With a crackle of electricity, Kakashi lunged forward, his hand a spear of pure lightning. Zabuza's eyes widened in realization, but it was too late. Kakashi's lightning blade pierced through Zabuza's chest, the force of the attack lifting the rogue ninja off his feet. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Then Kakashi withdrew his hand, and Zabuza collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath, blood pooling beneath him. The mist began to dissipate. The dense mist began to dissipate, revealing the aftermath of the intense battle on the bridge. Zabuza Momochi lay on the cold surface, grievously wounded, his breath shallow and labored. Kakashi Hatake stood over him, equally exhausted, blood seeping from multiple wounds. Naruto, panting heavily, approached cautiously, his eyes reflecting a mix of anger and sorrow. The weight of the battle hung heavily in the air, a testament to the fierce clash between shinobi. Zabuza's gaze shifted to Naruto, a faint, rueful smile tugging at his lips. You have your own dreams, don't you?" Naruto nodded, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I do. And I'll protect them, just like Haku protected you." A flicker of pain crossed Zabuza's face, not from his physical wounds, but from the realization of what he had lost. Haku, he was too good for this world. The sound of approaching footsteps drew their attention. Gato, accompanied by a group of thugs, sneered at the fallen ninja. Well, the demon has fallen. Looks like I don't need to pay you after all." Zabuza's eyes narrowed, fury igniting within them. With a surge of willpower, he forced himself to stand, gripping a kunai tightly. "Gato," he growled, "you'll pay for this." Ignoring his own injuries, Zabuza charged at Gato, cutting through the thugs with ruthless efficiency. Reaching Gato, he plunged the kunai into the crime lord's chest, ending his tyrannical reign over the Land of Waves. Mortally wounded and exhausted, Zabuza collapsed beside Gato's lifeless body. As the snow began to fall, he looked up at the sky, a sense of peace washing over him. Haku, I'm coming. Naruto watched silently, a profound sadness settling in his heart. He had witnessed the complexities of the shinobi world, the bonds, the sacrifices, and the harsh realities. Kakashi placed a hand on Naruto's shoulder, offering silent comfort. The battle was over, but the lessons learned would stay with them forever. As dawn broke over the Land of Waves, the villagers emerged from their homes, hope rekindled with Gato's demise. Tezuna's bridge stood as a symbol of their resilience and the promise of a brighter future. Team 7 had completed their mission, but the experiences they had endured would shape their paths as shinobi in the days to come. The Land of Waves arc not only introduced Team 7 to the true nature of the ninja world but also laid the foundation for the bonds and growth that would define their journey. Following the events in the Land of Waves, Team 7 returned to Konoha, their perspectives irrevocably altered by the harsh realities they encountered. The mission had not only tested their physical abilities but also their resolve and understanding of the world beyond their village. The Chunin exams, a test of growth and resolve. Back in Konoha, the village prepared for the upcoming Chunin exams, a series of trials designed to assess and promote genin to the rank of Chunin. Eager to prove themselves, Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura entered the exams, unaware of the challenges that lay ahead. The exams were divided into several stages, each more demanding than the last, testing not only their combat skills but also their intellect, teamwork, and perseverance. First stage. The written test. The initial phase was a written examination, proctored by the intimidating Ibiki Morino. Designed to assess information gathering skills under pressure, the test presented questions beyond the genin's current knowledge, encouraging them to use creative methods to obtain answers without being caught. Naruto, struggling with the questions, showcased his unwavering determination by confidently answering the final question, which was a test of resolve. Second stage. The Forest of Death. The next stage took place in the perilous Forest of Death, where teams competed to obtain both Heaven and Earth scrolls within a limited time. This phase tested survival skills, teamwork, and combat prowess. During this stage, Team 7 encountered Orochimaru, a rogue ninja with sinister intentions. Orochimaru marked Sasuke with a cursed seal, foreshadowing future conflicts. Preliminary matches. Due to the high number of teams passing the second stage, preliminary one-on-one matches were held to reduce the number of participants. These battles highlighted individual strengths and weaknesses, setting the stage for personal growth. Notably, Sasuke struggled with the effects of his cursed seal, while Naruto demonstrated his unpredictable tactics. Third stage. The final rounds. The final stage featured a tournament-style competition held in a grand arena, with dignitaries and villagers in attendance. These matches were intended to showcase the genin's abilities to potential clients and village leaders. The battles were intense, with Naruto achieving a surprising victory over Neji Hyuga, challenging the notion of predetermined fate. Sasuke's match against Gaara was interrupted, leading to the revelation of a larger conspiracy. The invasion of Konoha. Unbeknownst to many, the Chunin exams were part of a larger scheme orchestrated by Orochimaru to destroy Konoha. During the final matches, allied forces from the Hidden Sound and Hidden Sand villages launched an attack on the village, leading to widespread chaos and destruction. The third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, confronted Orochimaru in a battle that would determine the village's fate. The aftermath. Loss and determination. The invasion resulted in significant casualties, including the death of the third Hokage, who sacrificed himself to protect the village. The loss weighed heavily on the villagers and shinobi alike, serving as a stark reminder of the ever-present dangers in their world. For Team 7, the events reinforced their commitment to becoming stronger and protecting those they cared about. The search for Tsunade. With the position of Hokage vacant, the village elders sought a successor capable of leading and healing Konoha. Jiraiya, one of the legendary Sannin, was tasked with locating Tsunade, another member of the trio, to assume the role of the fifth Hokage. He invited Naruto to accompany him, offering an opportunity for Naruto to train and potentially learn the advanced technique, the Rasengan. Encounters and growth. During their journey, Naruto and Jiraiya encountered various challenges, including confrontations with members of the Akatsuki organization, who sought to capture Naruto for the 9 tails sealed within him. These encounters highlighted the growing threats beyond Konoha and underscored the importance of strengthening alliances and personal abilities. Tsunade's return. After locating Tsunade and overcoming numerous obstacles, including her initial reluctance and personal struggles, Naruto and Jiraiya convinced her to return to Konoha. Tsunade accepted the mantle of fifth Hokage, bringing hope and stability to the recovering village. Her medical expertise and leadership were crucial in rebuilding Konoha and preparing for future challenges. A new chapter begins. With Tsunade as Hokage, Konoha began a period of reconstruction and reflection. For Team 7, the experiences they endured served as catalysts for growth, strengthening their bonds and resolve. However, looming threats and personal ambitions hinted at trials yet to come, setting the stage for the next phases of their journey. Following the appointment of Tsunade as the fifth Hokage, Konoha began its recovery from the recent turmoil. However, Sasuke Uchiha, driven by a desire for power to avenge his clan, grew increasingly frustrated with his perceived lack of progress. This frustration was exacerbated by Naruto's rapid development and recent victories, intensifying Sasuke's feelings of inadequacy. In this vulnerable state, Sasuke was approached by the Sound Four, elite shinobi serving Orochimaru. They tempted him with promises of greater strength, suggesting that joining Orochimaru would grant him the power he sought. After a brief internal struggle, Sasuke decided to defect from Konoha, leaving behind his comrades and village. Upon discovering Sasuke's departure, Naruto was devastated but determined to bring his friend back. Tsunade assembled a retrieval team, comprising Naruto, Shikamaru Nara, Kiba Inuzuka, Neji Hyuga, and Choji Akamichi, to pursue Sasuke and prevent his defection. Each member faced formidable opponents from the Sound Four, leading to intense battles that tested their resolve and abilities. Naruto, after overcoming numerous obstacles, finally caught up to Sasuke at the Valley of the End, a historic site marking the battle between the founders of Konoha. The two engaged in a fierce confrontation, embodying their conflicting ideals and aspirations. Despite Naruto's pleas and determination, Sasuke emerged victorious but chose to spare Naruto's life, continuing on his path to Orochimaru. The mission's failure deeply affected Naruto and his comrades, highlighting the complexities of friendship, loyalty, and the pursuit of power. Undeterred, Naruto resolved to train harder, vowing to one day bring Sasuke back to Konoha. This chapter in their journey underscored the challenges of the ninja world and set the stage for future trials, as bonds were tested and the lines between friend and foe blurred. After Sasuke's defection, Naruto embarked on a journey with Jiraiya, one of the legendary Sannin, to undergo intensive training aimed at enhancing his skills and preparing him for future challenges. During this period, Sakura, deeply affected by Sasuke's departure and her perceived inability to assist her teammates, sought training under Tsunade, the fifth Hokage and a renowned medical ninja. Under Tsunade's mentorship, Sakura developed exceptional medical ninjutsu abilities and acquired superhuman strength by mastering precise chakra control. Site Turn 0 Search 12. 2.5 years later, Naruto returned to Konoha, more mature and skilled. Reuniting with Sakura, they formed a new iteration of Team 7, accompanied by Sai, a member of the secretive foundation, and led by their former sensei, Kakashi Hatake. Their primary objective was to locate and retrieve Sasuke, who had aligned himself with Orochimaru to gain the power necessary to avenge his clan by defeating his brother, Itachi Uchiha. During their missions, Team 7 encountered members of the Akatsuki, a clandestine organization targeting the tailed beasts, including the 9 tails sealed within Naruto. The Akatsuki's activities posed significant threats to the ninja world, prompting the formation of alliances among the 5 great shinobi countries to combat this menace. As the Akatsuki's plans unfolded, they successfully captured several tailed beasts, leading to escalating conflicts. Naruto, with the support of his comrades, faced numerous battles against Akatsuki members, striving to protect his friends and preserve peace. Concurrently, Sasuke confronted and defeated Itachi, only to learn that his brother's actions were influenced by the higher-ups of Konoha to prevent a coup by the Uchiha clan. This revelation fueled Sasuke's desire for retribution against Konoha. The culmination of these events led to the Fourth Shinobi World War, where the allied shinobi forces, comprising ninjas from all 5 nations, united to confront the Akatsuki and their resurrected army. Naruto played a pivotal role in the conflict, eventually reconciling with Sasuke after a final, intense battle. Post-war, Naruto's unwavering determination and growth earned him the title of 7th Hokage, symbolizing his journey from an ostracized child to a revered leader. Following the conclusion of the Fourth Shinobi World War, the ninja world entered a period of peace and reconstruction. Naruto Uzumaki, having played a pivotal role in the war, continued to grow both as a ninja and as an individual. 2 years after the war, during the Rinne festival, Naruto's longtime friend, Hinata Hyuga, crafted a red scarf reminiscent of the one Naruto wore during their childhood. This gesture symbolized her enduring affection for him. However, their budding relationship faced challenges when Tonari Otsutsuki, a descendant of the Sage of Six Paths, brother, sought to fulfill an ancient decree by destroying humanity. Tonari kidnapped Hinata's sister, Hanabi, prompting Naruto, Hinata, and their comrades to embark on a mission to rescue her and prevent global catastrophe. Throughout this journey, Naruto came to recognize and reciprocate Hinata's feelings, deepening their bond. After successfully thwarting Tonari's plans, Naruto and Hinata's relationship blossomed, culminating in their marriage. They eventually welcomed 2 children, Boruto and Himawari, marking the beginning of a new generation. Site Turn 0 Search 11. Years later, Naruto achieved his lifelong dream of becoming the 7th Hokage, leading the Hidden Leaf Village into an era of unprecedented peace and technological advancement. As Hokage, Naruto faced the challenges of balancing his duties with his responsibilities as a husband and father. His son, Boruto, initially struggled under the weight of his father's legacy, feeling overshadowed and seeking his own path. This generational shift set the stage for new adventures and challenges, as Boruto and his peers navigated their roles in a rapidly changing world, forging their identities while honoring the legacies of their predecessors.